Celebrating 49 years on the air, award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, an encore on soybeans, one of Mississippi's biggest crops. Plus, we're hearing a lot about water these days. Now, one state is paying farmers not to use it. In Southern gardening, they call them Mellow Yellow. Eddie Smith sings their praises. And in our feature, this industry's a tough nut to crack, but some farmers are up to the challenge. Farm Week starts right now. Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Russell.
And I'm Zach Ashmore. Great to have you with us again here on Farm Week. We lead with an encore. Soybeans, one of the most farmed crops in the U.S. and certainly in Mississippi. But why are they so important? What are soybeans used for? Here's a deeper look. The humble soybean, #1 row crop and the #2 ag commodity in Mississippi, with over 111 million bushels produced in 2020. So, what exactly makes this plant so special? What exactly is a soybean?
So soybean plants are legumes. They'd be related to something like a pea. Legume just means that these plants are able to fix nitrogen from the atmosphere and use it in a form that the plant can use in the soil.
Soybeans have several growth stages that experts normally refer to. The vegetative stages, VE through V4, are essentially the plant's youth. The reproductive stages, R1 through R8, take the plant from flowering to growing pods to harvest. Soybeans have a high protein count, which makes them an excellent food source, both for us and for animals.
The main use of soybean today is likely livestock and poultry. Feed. Soybeans have a high protein content. When they're processed, it's either done in the form of meal or the oil, and most of the meal is used for animal food. Oils can be used in human food. There's lots of things that we eat every day that we might not even realize that soy is a part of. Other aspects, I'm sure people have heard of biodiesel. That's one use that soybeans contribute to. And there's even things like lubricants and things like that in the industrial sector that soybeans can be used for.
It wasn't always like this, though. The soybeans seen a huge boost in uses over the past 30 years. Used to be, they were only grown on soils where other crops couldn't.
When you look at the history in our state, we primarily were a cotton-producing state historically. And soybeans have been, even in those days, were grown across a lot of acres. They were grown primarily on the acres that probably weren't suitable to produce cotton on. They were grown, as a rotational crop in some cases.
So, why have they become so popular? In short, their adaptability. They're a fairly hardy plant that finds a way to thrive in almost all soil types, at least in Mississippi. They can grow in hard clay soil, sandy soil, and everything in between.
So over the years, soybeans have come a long way. Modern varieties have been adapted to grow in a wide range of latitudes and environments, meaning that there are varieties suitable for extreme northern latitudes with short growing seasons, and further southern latitudes where we can have longer growing seasons and different daylight times and things of that nature. So soybeans are grown all over the world really, but they're widely adapted across the U.S.
But that didn't happen overnight. Along with innovative new ways to use soybeans, a lot of research has gone into finding better ways to grow and care for the crop.
More recently, I guess, over the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've changed the way we produce soybeans. We have different management practices that have been adopted. Anybody that's in the production world has heard of the early soybean production system that was developed years ago. That really revolutionized what we're able to do with soybeans. We've increased our yield potential through scouting efforts, technology. Modern genetics have come a long way. So just all the way around the board, we're able to produce more per acre.
So, what are the major issues with growing soybeans? No plant is perfect. Well, most of them have to do with the same issues as other row crops, mainly weeds, bug pests, and disease.
Some of the major issues, or really all of them, are very similar to what other commodities would experience. So weed control is a major concern. You know, in soybean in particular, disease management is a big deal. And, insect pressure can be detrimental to our yield. You know, those are probably three of the biggest factors that have variability in them.
But the one thing that keeps this crop strong is the same reason it became popular in the first place: its hardiness and adaptability.
Soybeans they're a very forgiving plant if they're given what they need and they're taken care of. So, for example, if you have subpar populations after planting due to weather or too much rain, flooding kind of scenarios, you know, they can compensate, and certain varieties can bush out and compensate for a lack of plant population, so to speak. So, you know, the genetic parents of these varieties that we grow, some are more upright in their architecture, some are shorter and bushier, so they'd be more suited to fill out a wider row.
All of these factors combine to create a commodity that's one of the pillars of the ag market and the top row crop in Mississippi, for now. Prices change, and with that also comes decisions for producers.
In a state like Mississippi, where we have our big three of being soybean and cotton and corn, they all kind of fit well together, and really it's just going to be dependent on what the market price is that year as to what the big money-driving selection is going to be.
So, that's the soybean, a plant with many uses and potentially more to come. It's grown all over the world, and although market prices fluctuate regularly, it seems that this commodity will stay relevant for many years to come.
Water, once again, a hot topic, especially in the western states. At the state level, paying farmers not to use water isn't a new idea, but it's back in vogue. Reporter Colton Chavez in Colorado has the story.
In an average year, we still have rivers in need, but this year, we're going to see it.
Colorado Water Trust says they don't like what they see when it comes to this year's river levels.
What we're seeing is the threat of rivers going completely dry.
Kate Ryan runs the nonprofit and says it's caused by Colorado's record low snowpack this winter. So this summer, she's asking people who depend on water to share it.
So most farming and ranching does pull their water from our rivers, and that water is melted snow.
Kate says the nonprofit is offering farmers short-term paid agreements to leave water in the river instead of diverting it to their fields, with legal protections in place so their water rights aren't permanently affected.
We have a rancher who we've worked with in the past, and he puts it really well. He'll be like, well, you know, some years, he says, my barn is full of hay and my wallet's empty. So yes, I definitely want to do it.
For the Colorado Water Trust, they say how they're going to measure success for this year is based on what a select few rivers look like. The Colorado, the Yampa, and even right here at Boulder Creek. And if it works, Kate says she likes what that could look like.
Hopefully the types of projects we work on at Colorado Water Trust are great for rivers, but they're also good for agriculture and the economies and communities that depend on it.
On the lighter side, Eddie Smith goes Mellow Yellow with 2 varieties of yellow roses, just in time to add a splash of summer color. Here's Eddie.
Yellow blooming plants bring a bright, cheerful touch to any garden. Let's take a look at 2 standout varieties that are sure to make a statement. Lady Banks Rose is a breathtaking, vigorous climber that is nearly thornless and highly resistant to disease. This old-fashioned rambler is beloved for its profuse display of small, clustered blooms that cascade beautifully in early to mid-spring, transforming the landscape into a stunning spectacle. In warmer climates, its foliage remains evergreen to semi-evergreen, with small, glossy dark green leaves, providing a lush backdrop for the flowers. The delicate semi-double to fully double blooms are about 1 inch wide and appear in large, cascading clusters. Unlike modern roses, Lady Banks rose blooms just once per year, but its spectacular floral show lasts for several weeks. Japanese rose, Kiera japonica, is a graceful deciduous shrub prized for its brilliant yellow blooms, arching green stems, and exceptional adaptability. Its double flowers, resembling small roses or pom-poms, create a lush ruffle effect in early to mid-spring. These golden yellow blossoms bring a burst of color to naturalized gardens, woodland settings, and shaded areas where other shrubs may struggle to thrive. Both plants add dazzling beauty to the spring garden, ensuring a season filled with bright color. I'm Eddie Smith, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up in our Farm Week feature, proof that farming is their school of hard knocks. For more than 100 years, Oregon has been America's hazelnut capital, but since the 80s, one challenge after another brought prices down dramatically. We head to the Willamette Valley, where one family has learned to use every tool in the toolbox to keep its head above water. Farming and the long-term play. That's coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
Mississippi, let's get moving. Join the Magnolia Moves Activity Challenge. The Mississippi State University Extension Service is offering this virtual challenge for individuals of any age or teams of family, colleagues, students, church members, or any other group. Join the 6-week April the 20th through May 31st challenge at no cost, and you'll set your own goals for becoming more active and eating healthier. You'll download the MoveSpring app or use the desktop version. Register for Magnolia Moves, and with automatic tracking, your movements and activities will be captured automatically to give you a clear, real-time view of your progress and achievements. Also, Extension will hold weekly prize drawings for participation across 5 different age categories. So join us and get fit and feel better, eat healthier, manage your weight, and exercise regularly. Magnolia Moves makes fitness accessible, practical, and enjoyable for everyone. Visit msuext.ms/Magnolia Moves to learn more, ask questions, and register today.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations, and their faith. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance toward the views of others. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Time for the market report, a focus on livestock this week.
That's right, Mike. We've got a few USDA reports and then a closer look at the poultry industry. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then, several USDA reports updating us on U.S. livestock. And finally, we take a closer look into the history of poultry production in Mississippi. So, markets closed, still trending up with row crops and livestock split. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, corn up 8.5 cents, nearly a 2% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, cotton again, down about 3 cents. That's more than a 3.5% decrease from the previous week. So the USDA recently released some new reports concerning U.S. livestock. The big one we'll cover first, the cattle on feed report. Then we move on to the milk production and poultry slaughter reports. Here's what they had to say. In this month's cattle on feed report, cattle and calves on feed for the slaughter markets totaled over 11.5 million head, 2% higher than last year at this time. Placements in feedlots totaled over 1.5 million head, 6% higher than last year. Marketings of fed cattle during April also totaled over 1.5 million head, 10% down from last year. Other disappearance, a statistical catch-all for when cattle dies naturally or is moved to another pasture, totaled 52,000 head, 4% up from last year. In the milk production report, production in the U.S. during April this year totaled 20 billion pounds, up over 2.5% from last year. Production per cow in the U.S. averaged about 2,000 pounds for April, 14 pounds above last year. The number of milk cows on farms in the U.S. was over 9.5 million head, slightly more than last year. In the poultry slaughter report, poultry certified wholesome during April this year totaled over 4.5 billion pounds, up 6% compared to last year. Preliminary total live weight of all inspected poultry was about 6 billion pounds, up 5% from last year. Young chickens inspected totaled nearly 5.5 billion pounds, up 5%, while mature chickens totaled over 68.5 billion pounds, up 17%. Turkey inspections up 10%, while duck inspections down 7%. Young chickens slaughtered averaged over 6.6 pounds per bird, up 1% compared to last year. Average live weight of mature chickens over 7 pounds per bird, up 7%. Ante-mortem condemnations, which is when an animal is rejected for food use before death, totaled nearly 12 million pounds. Now you see how things look these days, but sometimes it's good to get an idea of how we got here. In Mississippi, we've been growing chickens for a long time, and that's our #1 ag export, believe it or not. So let's see how that came to be.
You might not know it, but Mississippi is one of the largest broiler chicken producers in the country, number 6 in the nation as of 2024, and one of 20 that produce 93% of the national total. In 2023, poultry and eggs generated $3.52 billion. How did that come about? What makes Mississippi so involved with chicken production? We need to go back to the last century to find out. During the early 1900s, the breed of a chicken was more important than its ability to produce eggs. Poultry judges were held in high regard, and exhibitions were commonly held with awards being given to the best of the breed, similar to dog shows today. In the 1920s, crossbreeding began so commercial poultry operations could find chickens who were the best layers. Suffice to say, the old-school breeders were not keen on this trend, and some still feel that way today. However, research has indicated that crossbreeding has helped create the commercial chicken varieties we use today. Throughout the 20s to 40s, it was common for hatcheries to be on or near main streets of towns, and chicks were sold over the counter in small batches, about 10 to 50 chicks. World War II saw the U.S. poultry industry grow. However, this didn't affect Mississippi until the late 40s and early 50s. During this period, more and more poultry companies began purchasing their own breeder flocks, hatcheries, feed mills, grow-out operations, and processing plants, becoming vertically integrated. By the mid-1950s, integrated poultry companies began contracting with farmers to produce eggs and broilers. In general, the contract required the company to provide chickens, feed, and technical knowledge. The farmer provided the land, house, equipment, and labor. The vast majority of Mississippi's broilers and eggs are still produced under this type of arrangement. The Extension Service and the Mississippi Poultry Improvement Association conducted numerous poultry barbecue demonstrations throughout the state to promote chicken consumption. Poultry companies hired men to work with the farmers with whom they had production contracts. These men were called servicemen. Mississippi State University conducted schools to teach the most current technology available. Approximately 150 to 300 poultry workers attended these two-day schools. The industry matured during the 60s and early 70s. Several companies ceased to operate efficiently and were purchased by other companies. The industry consolidated into fewer, larger companies, and that is how it is today.
Always interesting to see where we came from, right? That's it for a deeper look into the markets. Mike?
Well, Mississippi is huge in poultry, and Oregon is tops in hazelnuts. Today, though, growers are facing obstacles, but they won't let a few challenges get in the way.
Oregon became America's hazelnut capital more than a century ago, partially because of what it didn't have that other areas did: a tree-killing fungus. But that advantage didn't last. Eastern filbert blight, which native hazelnut trees tolerate, but which kills European varieties that many growers prefer, was accidentally introduced in Oregon in the 1950s. Producers in the state's Willamette Valley, which had previously benefited from its geographic isolation, could only watch and wait as the fungus crept across the region.
It slowly started to move through our industry in the Willamette Valley in the 80s through up till recently. And so but already we had so much infrastructure built around hazelnut production that hazelnut growers really wanted to come up with a solution to that problem.
Oregon State University researchers set out to breed hazelnut varieties more resistant to the blight. After decades of plant breeding, they succeeded, releasing key new resistant varieties starting in 2008. Miller Hazelnut Farms, a family operation that has been growing hazelnuts near Hubbard, Oregon since 1944, replaced 16 acres of wheat and seed crops with the new resistant trees. Matt Miller and his family would later add more resistant trees to the mix.
So Eastern filbert blight wasn't as much of an issue. So all of a sudden, at that time, grass seed, which is a big crop here in the valley, we're known as the grass seed capital in the world here. A lot of the grass seed markets were in the tank, so they started just planting acres and acres and acres of hazelnuts.
As hazelnuts can take from 7 to 10 years to hit full production, USDA's count of bearing acres shows a notable increase beginning about a decade after the resistant varieties were released. The acreage grew 206% between 2009 and 2024, climbing from 28,700 acres to 88,000 acres. But success brought new vulnerability. As most of those new orchards were hitting full production volume, President Trump's first trade war began, setting off a series of events that caused hazelnut prices to drop dramatically.
Historically, Oregon has had a niche market in China for the in-shell hazelnut market. So we sell nuts to China just like this, not shelled. So there's like I think it's northeast of Beijing. There's like a cultural area there that they view hazelnuts as sacred, and they liked Oregon hazelnuts because of their size, they're big, they're really attractive looking, and the quality is the best in the world. So Oregon had this little niche market that was 25% above market price, roughly, depending on the year. So the start of the trade war, we lost 40% of our gross revenue because of that.
A trade route that had previously allowed the hazelnuts to reach China indirectly without getting hit by a tariff was now closed off. To add insult to injury, Oregon State experts confirmed in 2024 that the blight had mutated, overcoming the resistance gene in the specially bred hazelnut trees.
Recently, we're learning that there have been some genetic changes in the disease itself that have allowed it to overcome the resistance gene that we've relied heavily upon. So we're still really dependent on improving our genetics for the long-term sustainability of this industry.
If Oregon hazelnut growers, who produce 99% of the U.S. crop, have proven anything, though, it's that they don't give up easily. Recently, prices have rebounded. The country of Turkey, the world's largest hazelnut producer, responsible for about 70% of the planet's crop, experienced a spring frost and drought, damaging the country's nut production. In Oregon, these overseas weather events helped boost hazelnut prices by about 40% over last year. Market demand has also begun to shift from in-shell to shelled hazelnuts. About half of U.S. hazelnuts are still exported, with Canada now the biggest buyer. Ferrero Hazelnut Company, the Italian maker of hazelnut spread Nutella and hazelnut chocolates, is the biggest single buyer of Oregon hazelnuts. It announced in November 2024 that it was investing $170,000 toward hazelnut research at Oregon State, and a similar amount was sent to Rutgers University. Oregon State feels confident they can use biotechnology to accelerate their traditional plant breeding program. Wyman said they hope to then produce trees with multiple genes of resistance through natural plant breeding.
With gene editing or genetically modified, we still feel that their consumer is not going to be open to either one, especially our target European market. So we're very cognizant of that, and so we're going to use those tools to their greatest effect to assist the traditional breeding.
In the meantime, orchard owners can prune and use fungicides to help keep infected trees productive for much longer than they would have in the past.
Right now, what we have going, we have the tools in the toolbox. 40 years ago, when we as an industry first faced this issue, we didn't know what sprays work, we didn't know how to control it, we didn't know the life cycle, we didn't know anything. Now, we know how to battle it. There is blight in these trees, but depending on how you manage it, determines if it'll last 7 years once you get blight or 35 years, all on how you manage it.
Miller has learned that careful planning and patience is key.
I mean, all farming's a long-term play, but this is really a long-term play. I mean, you plant an orchard and it's, like I said, 10 years to recoup your investment, but farming's a school of hard knocks, no matter how educated you are.
Certainly hanging in there. Great story. Well, next week we cover not just agriculture, but as we always do, rural life in general.
In rural America, folks are headed to the racetrack, and that's more than the high-octane action of NASCAR. It's about the fun and friendships at local dirt tracks.
We head to the Bucket List track in Iowa, where drivers pour thousands into their passion, and between them and the fans wind up revving up the local economy. We're in high gear next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.